Today on CodeDependent, we're going to look at how to move things around on the screen. So in a previous episode, sometime in the past, we saw how to draw some simple graphics on the screen using Flex 3 as well as using Gumbo, the next version of Flex, which is currently codenamed Gumbo. So today we're going to see how to take that same content and actually move it around on the screen in very simple ways. So let's take a look at our Flex 3 application. So I call this Moving Ball, because that seemed appropriate. So we have this ellipse here that when I click on it, it moves down to the bottom of the screen. Nothing too exciting. It's just a quick little movement from the top of the screen down to the bottom of the screen. The more interesting part is what the code actually looks like. So as before, when we took a look at this content, we have a simple UI component here, which actually draws the graphics. So here in the create children method, we create this sprite, we create a gradient, we draw an ellipse into it. Go and check out the previous episode if you want to see more about that exciting and intense application. But we added a little bit of stuff to it. So in particular, we actually want to retain the sprite as a variable in this class because we're going to change its attributes over time because we need to change the Y position of this thing and move it from the top down to the bottom. So we've exposed a couple of functions, a couple of properties from this class, which we can set and get on the fly. So we have a ball Y, which is going to set the Y position of the ball inside the panel. And then we have the ball height, which is going to set the size of the ball. And that's important because we need to get the size because when we move it from the top to the bottom, we don't actually want to move it down below the screen. We just want to move it to this space, which is going to be the height of that panel minus the height of the ball. So we've exposed the properties that we need, and then we go into our other file over here, and we see how to actually animate things. So here we just set up the basic component itself, this container that has the ball inside it, has positioning and sizing information, but it also has a click event handler. So it says, okay, when somebody clicks on me, I'm going to call this mover animation. So you can see this new function that we put in here. This effect called an animate property, and this is basically going to change the value over time of the property that we define for it. So the target of the effect is going to be the ball panel itself. That's what we're going to send our event changes, our animation changes into. The property that we're going to be animating is this property that we called ball Y that we exposed from that UI component. And we're going to move it from a value of 0 to a value of the height of the panel minus the height of the ball, which will move it from the top of the screen down to the bottom of the screen, just as we saw before. So not that exciting, but we're starting to get a little bit of movement. So now let's take a look at how that application looks in Gumbo, the next release of Flex. So first of all, we can run our application. We can see this exciting thing with a green sphere instead of that silver sphere that we saw before. And similarly, it moves from the top of the screen to the bottom of the screen. So that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is, what does the code look like? So as before, we have a slightly different approach to drawing the graphics where we're using the declarative approach for placing the graphics on the screen, where we're creating the ellipse and the fill for it, the gradient fill in MXML markup. And then similarly to the Flex 3 case, we need to expose a couple of properties so that we can change these on the object over time. So we expose the ball Y and the ball H properties, and that changes the height and the position of the ball over time. Now we're not actually changing the position of the ball, but we do need to query it so that we know when we get to the bottom of the screen where exactly to place it. So now we can look at the application itself, and this, like the Flex 3 version, will position and size the component where we're drawing this thing, and then when there's a click on the ball, we play the animation that's defined up here. Now, one of the differences to notice now is in the next version of Flex, if you have non-component items declared in your file, then you have to have a declarations section to distinguish these objects from the things that are actually being visually rendered on the screen. So we have declarations to declare things like animations, the effects. So we have a declarations block here, and then we have this single effect, which is currently called FXAnimate. The class names may change because the release is currently under development. But this is the superclass of all the new effects. This is the most generic approach where FXAnimate is very similar to what animate property is in Flex 3, although it will actually animate an arbitrary number and type of property over time instead of just animating one single property. So FXAnimate says, okay, my ID is mover, and I'm going to be acting on the ball panel, and this is what I'm going to animate over time. So we have a property named ball Y. We're going to animate from 0 to the height of the panel minus the height of the ball, so we position it appropriately down at the bottom. And then we close it off. So that is our animation. It looks very similar to what we had before. A little bit different syntax, a little bit more capabilities that we'll see later as we get into more complex effects. So this was a show about the difference between some of the new effects that we have and some of the new ways of declaring them between Flex 3 and Gumbo. If you want to check out the code for this stuff, go to my blog at graphics-geek.blogspot.com.